Have you ever felt like your life was already written? Like you were just discovering a story that someone else had penned long before you arrived? Your parents told you to work hard and you'd find success. Your teachers said if you looked hard enough, you'd find your purpose. Society promised that if you searched long enough, you'd find happiness. But what if I told you they were all wrong? What if you're not finding anything at all? What if you're creating it? Here's something that'll break your brain. In quantum mechanics, there's this radical statement that physicists stumbled upon, one that made even Einstein uncomfortable. It goes like this: the object was not there before you found it there. Read that again. The object was not there before you found it there. Not that it was hidden, not that you didn't know where it was, but that it literally did not exist in that place until you looked. Your observation didn't just discover its location. Your observation created its location. And here's where it gets even more unsettling. This isn't some fringe theory. This is mainstream quantum mechanics, the Copenhagen interpretation, the most widely accepted framework for understanding how atoms behave. Scientists like Schrödinger, Max Born, Niels Bohr, they all had to wrestle with this. Observations don't just disturb what is to be measured. Observations actually produce the measured result. Your looking caused it to be in a particular place. Observing an atom being at a particular place created its being there. Think about what that means for a second. Not discovered, created. Now, before you close this video thinking I've lost my mind, stay with me. Because what I'm about to show you isn't just about atoms, it's about your entire life. Let me tell you why this matters, and why you're probably feeling a mix of confusion and resistance right now. Einstein himself was baffled by this. He famously said, "God does not play dice with the universe." He couldn't accept that reality was this fluid, this dependent on observation. Niels Bohr shot back, "Stop telling God what to do." Two of the greatest minds in physics, arguing over whether reality even exists before we look at it. So if you're sitting there thinking, "This sounds too weird to be true," you're in good company. Einstein thought so too. And here's the thing. This confusion you're feeling, it's actually the appropriate response. This isn't supposed to make sense to your classical mind. Your brain was trained to think like a shell game. Remember those carnival games where someone shuffles 3 cups and hides a ball under one of them? You're told to guess which cup the ball is under. In that game, the ball is already there. It's under cup A or cup B or cup C. You just don't know which one. When you guess correctly and lift the cup, you didn't create the ball being there. You discovered it. That's classical probability. The answer exists. You're just ignorant of it until you look. But quantum mechanics says something different. Something that'll make you rethink everything you've been told about life, fate, and manifestation. In the quantum world, there is no ball under any cup until you look. The ball exists in a state of possibility, potentially under all cups simultaneously. It's not that you don't know where it is, it's that it isn't anywhere until you observe. And the moment you lift the cup, the moment you observe, the ball collapses into existence at that location. You didn't find it. You forced it into being. Now here's where I need you to really hear this. This isn't a metaphor I'm making up to sound profound. This is what the math says. This is what experiments confirm over and over again. The double-slit experiment, the Stern-Gerlach experiment, quantum eraser experiments. All of them point to the same unsettling truth. The act of observation isn't passive, it's creative. And if that's true for atoms, the building blocks of everything in the universe, then what does that mean for your life? For your relationships? For your so-called destiny? What if the future you're trying to find doesn't exist yet? What if you're not discovering your path but collapsing possibilities into reality with every choice, every focus, every moment of attention? Stay with me, because this is where everything you've been told starts to unravel. Let me take you deeper into this shell game analogy because it perfectly captures the lie you've been living. You've been taught that life is about finding the right answer, finding your passion, finding your soulmate, finding success. The language itself betrays the assumption. It's already there, you just have to locate it. That's classical probability thinking. The belief that outcomes are predetermined and your job is to guess correctly. But quantum probability, completely different game. In classical probability, if I shuffle 3 cups with a ball under one of them, the ball has a definite location. Maybe it's under cup A with a 33% probability, cup B with 33%, cup C with 33%. But those percentages just reflect your ignorance. The ball itself? Already there. When you lift cup B and find the ball, you didn't create that outcome. You revealed what was always true. The ball was there before you looked. Now let's talk quantum probability. Let's talk about what actually happens with particles. Imagine you have an alpha particle, a chunk of atomic matter moving through space. Before you detect it, that particle isn't anywhere specific. It's described by something called a wave function. And that wave function spreads out over space. Not that the particle is in one spot and you don't know where, but that the particle is literally spread out, existing as potential in multiple locations simultaneously. Then you set up a Geiger counter. The moment that detector clicks, the moment you observe the wave function collapses, the particle that was spread across space suddenly concentrates at one point, the exact point where you detected it. And here's the kicker. If you hadn't set up the detector there, if you'd put it somewhere else, the particle would have collapsed at that different location instead. Your act of measurement didn't discover where it was. Your act of measurement created where it was. Max Born figured this out and won a Nobel Prize for it. He said the wave function, that spread out possibility, represents probability. Not the probability of where something is, but the probability of where it will be when you look. The measurement produces the result. Now bring this back to your life. How many times have you thought, I'm trying to find myself, or I'm searching for my purpose, or I need to discover what I'm meant to do? That language assumes your future is already written, that your purpose already exists somewhere and you're just playing a cosmic game of hide and seek. But what if there's no hidden purpose waiting to be found? What if there are infinite potential purposes in your observation? Your attention, your focus, your choice collapses those possibilities into one reality. You're not finding your path, you're creating it. Every time you focus your attention, you're collapsing the wave function of your life. The question isn't, what am I supposed to discover? The question is, what am I choosing to observe into existence? And here's what most people miss. Here's why this feels so hard. You've been trained to be passive, to wait for signs, to look for clues, to find the ball under the cup. But the universe doesn't work that way. The universe is waiting for you to observe, waiting for you to collapse the wave, waiting for you to create. And until you do, everything stays in potential, spread out, undefined, waiting. The shell game you've been playing your whole life, it's the wrong game. There's no ball under any cup until you decide to look. And where you look, that's where the ball will be. Not because you found it, because you created it being there. So here's my question for you, and really sit with this. Where are you looking right now? What are you focusing your observation on? Because that, not some predetermined fate, is what's collapsing into your reality. But here's where it gets even more radical. Because it's not just about what you observe, it's about the fact that you can't not observe. You can't separate yourself from what you're creating, and that's where most people get stuck. Ready to go deeper? Let's talk about why you can't escape this. Why the observer and the observed are inseparable, and why that changes everything. Here's something they don't teach you in school, but it's buried in the mathematics of quantum mechanics. The observer cannot be separated from the observed. Let me say that again because it's crucial. The position of an object is not independent of its observation at that position. You are not a neutral witness, you are a participant, an active participant. And this is where things get really personal. Think about your relationships. Think about how people treat you. Have you ever noticed that different people seem to bring out different versions of you? With some people, you're confident and articulate. With others, you're anxious and small. With some, you're funny and light. With others, you're serious and guarded. Most people explain this as different people bring out different sides of me, as if those sides were already there, just dormant. But what if it's deeper than that? What if the way someone observes you literally collapses different aspects of your wave function into reality? Let me tell you about an experiment, the double-slit experiment. You've probably heard of it, but let me tell you what it really means. You shoot particles, electrons, photons, at a barrier with two slits. On the other side, you have a detector screen. When you're not watching which slit the particle goes through, you get an interference pattern. The particle acts like a wave going through both slits simultaneously. But the moment you set up a detector to watch which slit it goes through, the moment you observe, the interference pattern disappears. The particle goes through one slit or the other. It behaves like a particle, not a wave. Your observation changed its behavior. Not because you bumped into it, not because you disturbed it mechanically, but because the act of observation collapsed its wave function from spread out through both slits to definitely through this slit. Now think about this in human terms. Before someone really sees you, before they observe you with attention, you exist in a state of potential. You could be anyone, strong or weak, worthy or unworthy, lovable or disposable. But when someone looks at you and sees you as weak, in that moment of observation, that version of you collapses into reality, not just in their perception, but in your actual behavior. You become what they observe. And here's the painful part for a lot of you listening. Here's why this hits so deep. If you grew up with parents who didn't really see you, who didn't observe you with love and attention, you never fully collapsed into a stable identity. You remained in a superposition of possibilities. Uncertain, undefined, desperate for someone to observe you into existence. That's not a metaphor. That's actually how consciousness works when mapped onto quantum principles. A child who is observed, truly seen by their parents, gets their wave function collapsed into, I am worthy, I am real, I matter. A child who is not observed stays spread out, uncertain, always searching for someone to make them real through their attention. And you carry that into adulthood. You become addicted to observation, to validation, to being seen. Because on some quantum level, you never fully collapsed into a stable sense of self. Now, before this gets too heavy, let me tell you the empowering part. If observation creates reality, then you can change what's being observed. You've been living your life as if you're a fixed entity, as if who you are was determined long ago and you're just stuck with it. But quantum mechanics says something different. It says you're not a particle with a definite position. You're a wave function with infinite potential. And what collapses you into a specific state is observation. So the question becomes, who's doing the observing? Are you letting other people collapse your wave function? Are you letting your parents, your partner, your boss, your social media followers determine who you are through their observation? Or are you observing yourself? Are you consciously choosing where to place your attention? On your strengths, your potential, your chosen identity, and collapsing yourself into that reality? Because here's the truth that'll set you free. You are always being observed. If not by others, then by yourself. You are always collapsing some wave function into reality. The only question is whether you're doing it consciously or unconsciously. Most people are unconscious observers of their own lives. They focus on their failures, their fears, their limitations. And through that observation, they collapse those possibilities into reality. But you can change that. You can shift what you observe. And when you do, you shift what becomes real. This isn't positive thinking. This is quantum mechanics. But here's the paradox that trips everyone up. And this is where I need you to really pay attention. Because this is where most manifestation teaching gets it wrong. Let's talk about why thinking positive isn't enough, why affirmations fail, why your vision board collects dust while your life stays the same. You've tried it, haven't you? You've read The Secret, you've written affirmations, you've visualized your dream life, you've made a vision board with pictures of the house you want, the relationship you want, the body you want, and then nothing. Or worse, things got harder. So you decided manifestation is bullshit, just spiritual bypassing, just toxic positivity, just privilege disguised as wisdom. But what if I told you the problem wasn't manifestation itself? The problem was that you were observing the wrong thing. Let me explain through quantum mechanics. When a wave function collapses, it collapses based on what's being observed, not what you wish you were observing, what you're actually observing. And here's what most people miss. You cannot observe an outcome you don't have while simultaneously collapsing the wave function toward having it. Let me say that differently. When you focus on "I want money," you're not observing money. You're observing lack. You're observing the state of wanting. And what does that collapse into reality? More wanting, more lack. When you stare at your vision board of the perfect relationship while sitting in your empty apartment, what are you really observing? The gap, the absence, the not having it yet. And through your observation of that gap, you collapse your wave function into more gap, more absence, more not having. This is why positive thinking fails for so many people. They're using it to focus on what they don't have, hoping that focus will bring it to them. But quantum mechanically, that's backwards. You can't collapse a wave function toward an outcome by observing its opposite. Here's what actually works. And this is where it gets sophisticated. Instead of observing the outcome, you observe the state of being that would already have that outcome. Let me give you an example. Let's say you want financial abundance. Most people do this. They think about money, they visualize bank accounts, they imagine buying things. And the whole time they're actually observing their current lack and trying to bridge to abundance. But someone who understands wave function collapse does something different. They observe themselves being abundant now. They observe the feelings, the energy, the version of themselves that already has what they want. They're not trying to manifest the money, they're collapsing their personal wave function into the state where money flows naturally. See the difference? One is trying to force an external outcome through observation. The other is collapsing their internal state through observation, which then naturally produces the external outcome. This is why Joe Dispenza talks about becoming the future self. Not thinking about the future, becoming it now, collapsing your wave function into that identity in this present moment. This is why Bruce Lipton talks about changing your beliefs at the subconscious level. Because your subconscious beliefs are what you're actually observing most of the time. And that observation creates your reality. You can say affirmations all day, but if your subconscious is observing "I'm not good enough," guess which wave function collapses into reality? The one you're actually observing, not the one you're pretending to observe. And this is where most people get stuck. This is where the cosmic joke reveals itself. You've been told to fake it till you make it, to act as if, to think positive. But you can't fake observation. You can't pretend to collapse a wave function. Your consciousness knows what it's actually observing, and that's what becomes real. So what do? You stop trying to observe the outcome you want. You start observing who you are when you already have it. You collapse your identity wave function first, and from that collapsed state, the external outcomes naturally follow. This is the difference between manifestation that works and manifestation that's just wishful thinking. Wishful thinking, "I want to be rich." Observing lack, collapsing into more lack. Real manifestation, "I am abundant." Observing abundance, collapsing into abundant identity, which naturally attracts wealth. Wishful thinking, "I hope someone loves me." Observing loneliness, collapsing into more loneliness. Real manifestation, "I am whole and loved." Observing completeness, collapsing into that state, which naturally attracts loving relationships. See how this works? You're not trying to manifest things, you're collapsing wave functions. You're choosing which aspect of your infinite potential to observe into reality. And here's the radical part. Here's where this all comes together. You are always collapsing wave functions. Always. Every moment. Every thought. Every focus of attention. You cannot not do this. The only question is, are you doing it consciously? Or are you on autopilot, unconsciously observing your fears, your traumas, your limitations, and collapsing those into reality over and over again? Most people are running on unconscious observation. They're collapsing their childhood programming into their adult reality. They're observing through the lens their parents gave them, through the lens society gave them, through the lens of their worst fears. And then they wonder why their life looks the way it does. But here's the good news. Here's where hope enters the equation. If you're always collapsing wave functions, then you can change what you're observing right now. This moment, this breath, you can shift from unconscious to conscious observation, from passive to active, from victim to creator. And that shift, that's what we're about to explore. Let me bring this all together. Let me show you how these three pieces, the shell game, the observer effect, the wave function collapse, form one coherent picture of how your life actually works. You are not discovering your life. You are collapsing it into existence moment by moment. The future is not a predetermined path you're trying to find. It's a field of infinite possibilities, and your observation, your attention, your focus, your consciousness selects which possibility becomes real. You've been living as if you're a passenger, as if life is happening to you, as if you're just trying to find the right cup with the ball underneath. But the truth is more powerful and more terrifying than that. You're not the person guessing which cup. You're the observation that creates the ball, and you've been doing this your whole life. Unconsciously, every relationship that fell apart, you observed it into that outcome, not because you wanted it to fail, but because you observed yourself as unworthy, or them as unreliable, or love as temporary. And that observation collapsed the wave function of the relationship into decay. Every job you hated, you observed yourself into that experience, not because you chose misery, but because you observed yourself as stuck, as unqualified for better, as not deserving more. And that observation collapsed the wave function of your career into stagnation. Every pattern that keeps repeating, you're observing it into reality. The same kind of partner, the same kind of problem, the same kind of outcome. Because you haven't changed what you're observing. You're still looking through the same lens, collapsing the same wave functions. Now here's where it gets interesting. Here's where quantum mechanics offers you something psychology can't. Psychology says you have to heal your past to change your future. You have to process your trauma. You have to understand why you do what you do. And there's truth in that. Understanding helps, but quantum mechanics says something more immediate. You just have to change what you're observing. Right now, this moment, you don't have to fix everything to start collapsing different wave functions. You just have to shift your observation. From I am broken to I am becoming. From nothing ever works out to I'm learning to create differently. From people always leave to I'm attracting conscious relationships. Each shift in observation is a shift in what wave function you're collapsing. And here's the principle that makes this possible. The observed cannot be separated from the observer. You are not separate from your life. You are not separate from your problems. You are not separate from your potential. You are the consciousness that's observing it all into existence, which means you have more power than you thought, but also more responsibility than you might want. Let me address that responsibility piece, because this is where people get scared. If I'm saying you create your reality through observation, does that mean everything bad that's happened to you is your fault? Does that mean childhood trauma is your fault? Does that mean abuse is your fault? No, absolutely not. Here's the distinction. As a child, you were not consciously observing. You were being programmed. Your parents, your environment, your experiences, they were doing the observing for you. They were collapsing your wave function before you had the consciousness to do it yourself. And those early collapses became your default patterns, your unconscious observation. So no, it's not your fault that you developed patterns of unworthiness. It's not your fault that you learned to observe yourself as small or broken or unlovable, but, and this is the empowering but, it is your responsibility now. Now that you're aware, now that you understand how observation works, now that you know you're collapsing wave functions every moment, you can't change what happened to you, but you can change what you're observing into existence right now. This isn't victim blaming. This is pattern recognition. This is consciousness awakening. The question isn't, why did this happen to me? The question is, what am I observing right now, and is it collapsing me toward the future I want? And if it's not, you can shift right now. This moment. You can shift from observing your trauma to observing your resilience, from observing your lack to observing your potential, from observing your past to observing your possibility. Each shift is a collapse. Each collapse is a choice. Each choice is creation. You are not a victim of your wave function. You are the observer of it, and that makes you powerful in ways you're only beginning to understand. So here's where I need you to really sit with something. Something that might make you uncomfortable. Something that might also set you free. You have always had this power. You've always been collapsing wave functions. You've always been creating through observation. The only difference between your past and your potential future is consciousness. Awareness. Intention. You've been doing this on autopilot, observing through programming, collapsing possibilities based on fear and conditioning. But now you know. Now you see. Now you can choose. And here's the permission you've been waiting for. Here's the authority you needed to hear it from. Einstein, one of the greatest minds in human history, was wrong about this. He couldn't accept that observation creates reality. He wanted a universe that was solid and predetermined. He wanted the ball to be under the cup before anyone looked. But the universe said no. Niels Bohr was right. Werner Heisenberg was right. Erwin Schrödinger was right. The mathematics proved them right. The experiments proved them right. Reality is not fixed until you observe it, and you, yes, you are an observer, which means you're not just living life. You're authoring it. You're collapsing possibilities into actualities with every moment of attention. And if you've been collapsing the wrong possibilities, if your life looks like your fears instead of your dreams, it's not because you're powerless. It's because you've been unconsciously powerful. But unconscious power creates chaos. Conscious power creates intention. So here's what I'm giving you permission to do. Here's what the universe itself is inviting you to do. Stop looking for your life. Start creating it. Stop trying to find yourself. Start observing yourself into existence. You're not discovering who you're meant to be. You're collapsing who you choose to be. And every time you catch yourself observing something you don't want, observing your unworthiness, your limitations, your fears, you can stop, you can shift, you can observe something else. That's not toxic positivity. That's quantum mechanics. That's how reality actually works. The wave function doesn't care if you've been observing wrong for 30 years. It collapses based on what you're observing right now. This moment, this breath, which means your past doesn't determine your future. Your observation does. You are not a victim of your wave function. You are the observer. You are the one with the power to collapse infinite possibilities into one chosen reality. So choose, observe, create, not someday, now. Here's what I want you to do today, just to start. I want you to notice what you're observing, not what you're thinking about, what you're actually giving your attention to. Are you observing your problems or your potential? Are you observing what's wrong or what's possible? Are you observing through the lens of your trauma or the lens of your choice? Just notice. Don't judge it. Don't try to force it to be different. Just become aware of where your observation is landing. Because awareness is the first step of conscious collapse. You can't change what you're not aware of. And once you're aware, you can shift, one observation at a time. One moment at a time. One wave function at a time. You're not trying to fix your whole life today, you're just practicing conscious observation. You're just learning to notice where you're looking and choosing whether to keep looking there. That's it. That's the practice. That's how you start collapsing different wave functions. Now, if you're feeling something shift inside you right now, if you're feeling that spark of recognition that, yes, this is true, do me a favor. Drop one word in the comments, one word that captures what you're feeling right now. It could be empowered. It could be confused. It could be ready. Whatever's true for you. Because this conversation, It's not just me talking to you. It's us collapsing a collective wave function. It's us creating a space where conscious observation becomes the norm. This is episode 12 in the Observer Effect series, and we've just scratched the surface of how deep this goes. Because tomorrow, in episode 13, I'm going to show you something that'll make your brain hurt in the best possible way. We're going to look at an experiment where you can literally choose to prove two contradictory realities about the same atom. You'll see exactly how your decision to observe changes what's physically real. Not metaphorically, literally. The link to the full playlist and the next video is in the description below. If this resonated, hit subscribe. Because you're not just learning quantum mechanics, you're waking up to the power you've always had. You are the observer. Reality is waiting for you to look. So where will you look next?